So next question here on the DM roundtable is, what is a fun, interesting way to use a Remorhaz? One of my favorite monsters. It's like a giant centipede that roams the tundra, and it's cold and it's hot, like the Katy Perry song.
I thought of an idea where you have this elder ancient Remorhaz, and she has her last hatch of eggs, and she's hibernating. And at this point, it takes her years and years and years to hibernate. And these eggs that she has, these kind of eggs are super valuable. And the players find out about this. A local inhabitants, either there was an ice cave that formed by water or something, and they went inside and they saw this sleeping Remorhaz, or there was a crevasse or something. Now, another interesting thing you did was you gave the Remorhaz a mile tremor sense, which in the books, I think it was 60 feet. But when they're hibernating, you could say they don't quite have this. And also you could do a thing where the locals have invented like snowshoes or something that they use so on the ice, so that the Remorhaz doesn't get the tremor sense. But so the players can wear those, but it slows your movement down. And the other thing that you can have with this, that they're going to sneak in to the Remorhaz's lair. If they're going to have any encounters, are you going to have things, a Yeti or a ice troll or something? And in that encounter within a mile, is there a chance that there's going to be tremors on this or whatever, and the Remorhaz is going to wake up? You could also have something competing for this. I was thinking the ice hag, the Behir hags or something. There is an ice hag, and they want these eggs as well, and so they're following the players or competing. Or of course, frost giants are your classic. They love the Remorhaz eggs to use. The ice hag wants to use this as well. And then finally, when the players, if they get there, the Remorhaz doesn't wake up, maybe there's a few eggs that have kind of rolled away from the thing, and they could take them and they could get away, right? Or do they take, because once they get that one surprise round, or do they? Because as they get close to her, she wakes up, you're rolling the stealth or whatever. They got to take the snowshoes off or whatever. Because anytime I see elder something, she's the last of her kind. She's the ultimate Remorhaz. And, people know these are super valuable. You could make them 10,000 gold or 20, whatever you want. And depending on your campaign, she's probably going to wake up, right? They might be, and they see the two and they go, but what other treasure does she have under there, right? Do we take them or do we fight her? Again, their level and all that kind of stuff comes into play. And how much in terms of these other battles have they had or not? So that was my idea. And again, it was just based on your concept of the elder Remorhaz.
That's amazing. I really like that idea of like, will they, won't they, with the bait, let's call it. The players could even hear like, oh, local frost giants aren't friendly, but they'll always entertain someone giving them Remorhaz eggs. Like you were saying, they love to raise those up and use them in their smithing.
I'm not nearly as serious as Kevin's idea, so I don't know how useful my ideas will ever be, but I'm going to say them anyway. I still feel like there's a place, there's a market, there's an opportunity to have a mount that has a built-in seat warmer, and Remorhaz is basically a mount that has a built-in seat warmer. And in a cold place, you want to make sure that your bum is not cold, because it's not a pleasant way to go, particularly if you're traveling long distances. So the next one, I was thinking back to the fact they actually generate heat. So you could actually use a Remorhaz as like a portable heater in your Great Hall, like a giant's Great Hall. That's what's cooled up. It's not like dogs or cats or anything like that. No, it's a Remorhaz. And you don't need to have a fireplace because the Remorhaz is giving off the heat. It might actually be cooking the food, for all you know. Like it's in the corner there or by the hearth or whatever. And then the last one is me going the full Monty, I guess. And I was thinking of Alice in Wonderland at this time. And I was thinking, well, I can, just because of, yes, you've already figured it out. Okay. In Alice in Wonderland, there is a caterpillar, a blue caterpillar that smokes. The image that I have is this Remorhaz who is like a drug-taking, happy-smoking Remorhaz in a cold environment, not on a mushroom or anything like that. You go and seek advice from this sage who's basically dealing in weed. So yes, those were my ideas and how I would go about using the Remorhaz in my game. Otherwise, they make fantastic omelets if you can get the eggs.
So it wasn't until we started talking about them that I realized that the only situation I've ever used or thought of using a Remorhaz in is as a travel encounter. I've never thought of building a story, never thought of giving them personality. So the idea I came up with before this was actually not mine. It was one of my DM's ideas. Remorhaz has tremor sense, like we've said. Ice Mephits can innately cast Fog Cloud. The Remorhaz and the Ice Mephits could have a working relationship where 4 or 5 Ice Mephits go around and cast Fog Cloud and get this huge area. Just all the players are completely blind in this heavily obscured area, but the Remorhaz isn't because he has Tremor Sense. Attacks are going to all have advantage on the players, and all the players are going to have disadvantage on the attacks until they can find those Ice Mephits and get rid of those Fog Clouds. I've run this. This has been run against me, and it has been amazing both times.
That sounds brutal and memorable. I love that idea. I always like finding monsters that have a symbiotic synergy relationship. That's a perfect one.
So think back to the 1990 classic, Kevin Bacon classic, Tremors. And so I'm thinking have a Tremors campaign with, worms and such, but they need a leader. So what do? You get a Remorhaz, give him sentience. He is the leader, the BBEG. The other idea I had was kind of like bending it a little bit and turning it into an ocean creature. Like looking at it, it looks like it'd be a really dope underwater creature and encounter. And then, that Tremor sense, deep sense, in the water, stuff like that. But Tremors campaign is my best idea.
I love the idea of making them aquatic. I've also used them as big enforcers of a Lich Queen campaign that I did. It was like a 5-part campaign, and they were raised up as like necrotic Remorhaz, so they were undead, and they exploded when they died with like necrotic steam and stuff like that. And they had these huge tunnels down below, so the players would sometimes see like a cow, and all of a sudden, like like in Tremors, like all of a sudden like gets pulled under the ice or the snow. You could also do a bait and switch at some point where you do like the players see like an ice troll, like the ones from Skyrim, and they think they're gonna fight it, but like in the first round of combat, all of a sudden just like there's always a bigger fish, like the Remorhaz just comes up and like eats it whole. If you really want to disturb your players, have you ever seen those like mating pits of like rattlesnakes when they're all just like in a pit together? Do that with a bunch of Remorhaz and like almost like a caldera where they're like, why is there so much steam coming up over there? And they look over and like everything's been melted down, and there's just like a bunch of Remorhaz like writhing together in like a big furnace of mating ritual, and that'll be scalded into their minds, no pun intended. And use them in like a Yellowstone type location as well, where they can utilize like underground calderas and geysers and all that kind of places like their network. And maybe they ate some merchant's caravan, and you have to go down to where they nest to see where they pooped out like a bunch of rare gems or something like that because they just ate some valuable camel or something. I don't know.
I mean, the great thing about it is like when the hammerhead sharks get together to mate, there's just hundreds of them in the water. But they're occupied with that. So you don't have to describe necessarily what's going on, but the players have to navigate, and they know they can go through, and they're not paying attention to them until one does, or something like that. So until they attract that attention. So that you can use the mating ritual as there's a lot of them gathered, but they're not paying attention to you right now. If they do, for some reason, you're in big trouble.
I like that idea because it's like, you're not going to fight these Remorhaz. You'll die. There's 20 Remorhaz. They're going to kill you. But they might not notice if you try to get to the center of their festivity where there is something you need to get to, and maybe the players are taking turns and it's like the environment is the boss. You roll and the Remorhaz, there might be a certain shift, and one of them whips its tail and one of the players gets hit, and so they're trying to avoid being too noticeable and not getting too banged up, just trying to weave in there and get something out. Like, I think that would be great.
I think the Tremors thing got me thinking about, in that movie, there were areas you could go. First of all, you had to be perfectly still. So let's say there's a Remorhaz that are mating, or there's a bunch of Remorhaz around you, and everyone is being perfectly still. Now, if you've got a fly spell or something, or levitate, of course, levitate, you just go up and down. But then there's areas like they had where you go on a solid rock, and they couldn't, I believe maybe they couldn't hear you through the rock, or they couldn't get there. I can't remember. They couldn't go through the rock. There's just a lot of possibilities. And the other thing is, I love the idea of the sentient Remorhaz, because I've talked about this in a video I did on Cyclops. If you had an Albert Einstein Cyclops, and they're saying, why are we fighting each other? Let's organize each other. And then you've got an interesting opponent. And anytime you give that minor intel, now you're homebrewing and you're changing it. But the Lich, hanging out with the Lich, of course, if it's an undead, but maybe it is, and it develops this intelligence. And I think anytime you do that, and the players are, what is going, this Remorhaz is thinking or whatever.
So those are our ideas of how to use a Remorhaz. What are your ideas? Which of our ideas did you like? What are you going to use? And we'll see you in the next DM Roundtable question. Bye-bye.